Okay, so Nancy Peterson is the winner of the prestigious Audio Publishers Association Audie Award. She's a 25-year veteran actor of stage, screen, and recording studio. She has her dialects, diving deep into the study of language, and her narration style, summed up by Audiophile magazine, creates a sense of listening to a play instead of a straightforward reading. She resides near the foothills of Utah Rocky Mountains with her husband and their 6 children, 2 rats, 2 dogs, 3 fish, 1 turtle, 1 snake, a hive of bees, gecko, which I think is quite impressive on its own. And I know that my understanding is one of her sons is engaged, and they present a little surprise for her.
Yes.
This morning.
That's why I'm late. I had them walk in a few minutes ago, and she was wearing a ring. There was a proposal. I'm going to have a new daughter-in-law, so I apologize for being late. We had a little bit of chaos here for a bit.
Which is exciting. So
yes.
Congratulations to you all.
Congrats.
Thank you.
But with that, go ahead and take it away, Nancy.
Okay, so I think the best place to start is whether or not an audiobook is right for your project. There are some great avenues for creating audiobooks now. 4 years ago, when I was seriously moving into the realm of audiobooks, there was only one platform that was widely known and that was probably the best way for an independent or self-published author to find someone and find a producer, a narrator, and a way to get their book produced. And the name of that is ACX, Audiobook Creation. Find narrators who will audition for, also get the production end of the book done. So it was a really good fit for me because being here in Utah, I don't have access to the large publishers. They're on the coasts typically, or in Chicago or other larger cities. So for me, getting started on this platform was wonderful, and it's been a great experience. So again, it's acx.com. That's probably the most commonly used. I'm going to give you a couple more though that have since come into this industry. Findaway Voices is another one, and I believe you just find them at findaway.com. SpokenRealms.com is another one I use and are very good at getting independent products made and distributed. So the purpose of a company like either ACX, Spoken Realms, Findaway, I think there are a few more that are a little bit smaller. They match you up with a narrator that you get to choose, and they help you with the production, and then they also help with distribution. So for example, if you're an author that has content on Amazon, it is really easy to have an audiobook made. First of all, if you want to go with ACX, you can just get on there, you claim your book, and the process is almost seamless because ACX is actually an Amazon company. So they can match you with your book very quickly and easily. You just do a little search, or I don't know exactly how it works, but it's quite easy for someone to find their book on ACX. You claim it as your book, and you just fill out a little form and send it out, and people will start sending you auditions. So after that, the product is sent to Audible.com, which is also an Amazon company, and probably the largest player in MP3 and digital content for audiobooks. They also have options where you can keep some of the what they call exclusive. Well, I guess it depends on who you use, but non-exclusive contracts. So you could have another channel like the Deseret Bookshelf, or you could have CDs made, because there are a lot of people who still really enjoy having a physical CD. So there are lots of options out there, and I can get into more detail with more questions, but that's it. The avenues are there. They're in place for both independent and also for people who have publishers publishing your books. You got to check and see if you own the audio rights, because if the audio rights were not sold with the book, you probably still have those. You can also, they're just separate, so you can also retain those and have an audio version made where you have a little bit of say in what happens. Also, if you are with a larger publisher, you can also write into those contracts a little bit of control, like cover art. You know, you can have final say on cover art or final say on who your narrator is. So that's just kind of the foundation of having audiobooks made. I think for some people it seems daunting, but there are so many resources out there, including, you know, narrators, or even places where you can do your own. You know, there are coaches out there. There are people who specialize in training authors to read their own material, and there's some fantastic resources out there for anyone who wants to have an audiobook made. So are there any other questions?
Fascinating.
Okay.
That's great. No questions yet, but great information.
Okay. I can give you more in-depth information into the process if you're interested in that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, for example, let's say you put your book on ACX, and it's up for auditions. You'll be getting a lot of auditions from people. They'll be coming right to your inbox. You can listen to them, and you can categorize them whether you like them or they just don't fit the project. So once you choose your narrator, then the narrator goes to work, and you send them the manuscript, and it takes, usually what they figure is 9,200 words. Give me a second, I'm getting it backward. It is that per hour? Okay, anyway, let's say you have a 10,000 word book. That's going to take, I'm getting it mixed up, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll cut that part out because I don't remember. But anyway, they have it figured out for you. So you can get an estimate about how long your book will run. And so let's say your book is 5 hours. And the narrator will take that, and they will schedule out anywhere from 5 to 10 days, somewhere in their schedule. The recording of the book will take at least 5 days to do, because it's about 1 hour for each, 1 hour of finished audio for every hour. 1 hour, okay, sorry, 1 hour of finished every day, sorry, that you work. So we can produce approximately 1 finished hour per day, and that varies. You know, for some people it's a little longer, and for people who've been into the business longer, they can get more done. But you can typically project that if you have a 5-hour book, it will take 5 days to record, then the editing will take another couple of days, then proofing, doing corrections, which there are always corrections. You know, it comes back to me, I do all those corrections, goes back, and then we send the finished product into ACX, and then it's usually 14 days to have it in the retail version ready for sale on Amazon and Audible. So, and I would say most narrators usually will book out, you know, a month or two. So it's unusual for someone to say, yeah, I can have this done for you next week, kind of thing. It takes a little bit longer. So I don't know, do you have any thoughts about, any questions about, like, on your end of it, what your process is, you know, the payment or anything like that? So I can answer that for you.
I think it's really helpful just to know kind of the timeline, because I really didn't know what the production timeline was. And so, and to me, that seems pretty quick to get it all done, which is great.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I think it's good to know that really most people, it is hard to imagine how long it takes. For me, starting out, I would say it took me 8 hours to finish 1 hour of audio. And so it was a very frustrating process to begin with because it was not efficient at all. And I stumbled a lot and it was not good. But so it depends on who you hire. But, you know, a lot of times if you have a window, or if, for example, if you have a pre-order for something and you're putting it on Amazon, you can get everything lined up on the audio version so that they come to a very close time when they're released. Unfortunately, on the production side of things, we don't have much control over ACX and Audible approve the audio. So we just give kind of a ballpark. For example, if you have a book that's coming out October 1st that you know of now, that's your deadline, that's when it's going to, you know, that's your release day. You probably want to have your audio done and submitted a couple of weeks before that. So if it comes out a little earlier than the book, that's okay. You don't have to say anything if you want to, you know, have them revealed at the same time. But at least it will be done, it will be there, so that when people you know, want to buy it, they can. And the other thing about that too is you can pre-order the audio as well. So and in that case, I don't know for sure, that's something to look into, but they may release at the same time if you do a pre-order. But I don't have a lot of information because that's fairly new, I think, to do those together. So anyway, so let me just give you another little tidbit of information when you go onto ACX that makes it great for doing audio. You can choose many options for payment for a narrator and for production. One of the best options, depending on your budget, is royalty share. A royalty share contract through ACX is basically you don't pay anything up front. Your narrator and your production team on the back end, they will take half the royalties that you receive. This is a 7-year contract. So for some people it's great, and for some people it's not. I mean, you have to kind of evaluate how your book is doing. If you have a really great selling book, then you're probably going to pay more to your narrator and production team if you do a royalty share than you would paying up front. Any other contractor, like a painter or you know, construction person, someone who does construction, pay them up front, they do their job, and you know, when you sell your house, they don't make any money on that. You know, it's kind of like a narration. You can either pay up front or you can do this royalty share. I'll tell you the pros and cons of royalty share. With royalty share, you probably won't get as many auditions, not as many auditions from top tier narrators and production teams. You'll still probably get auditions, but the royalty share for narrators and producers is a bit of a risk. So one thing we like to do, at least I do for me, is if someone is saying, hey, I want to do a royalty share, I always ask the question, well, will you please share your sales numbers with me? And so I hope you understand that's not an invasion or a, you know, something we're being nosy. It's really a business decision, because if you think about it, if, again, going back to the 5-hour book, we're taking a week to produce something that we're not getting paid for up front. First of all, can we afford to do that? You know, we have to consider, okay, is this something we can afford to do? And secondly, am I going to be able to recover my costs? My upfront costs, I do pay my editor and proofer, and those are hard costs that come right out of my pocket right at the beginning, even before I get paid. So those are some things to consider with royalty share. Great option, and you know, here's the other thing. If you really have nothing to lose, to try it. You know, you may find that you don't get the exact narrator that you wanted, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of people out there that are very good, that are starting out, and that are choosing royalty share to build their portfolio. So that is a possibility. The per finished hour option is basically contract work. You choose your narrator. They do all the work. When they're done, we click a little button that says I'm done. You get to review everything. Hopefully there are no mistakes at that point. If there are mistakes, we fix them. We take them and fix them. But also at this point, it's really important to know that if there's anything you don't like, you know, for example, you wrote something and you're like, oh, I want to change that. I don't love how I wrote that. Then you need to understand you can change it. but you'll probably be charged a studio fee since that wasn't in the original manuscript. Okay, so do you want me to answer this question? How much does it usually cost to produce an audiobook if the author pays up front? Okay, when you go on ACX, am I muted? Okay.
Nope. I can hear you.
Sorry. Okay, so when you go on ACX, there are tiers. You'll find a $0 to $50 an hour tier, a $50 to $100 an hour tier, and it goes up to, I think, $400 to $1,000 tier. So let me clarify that, though, because that's like, what? You know, that sounds really super expensive, and it can be, depending on the team you hire. But I will say those hours, they're not actual hours. Those are finished hours. So, for example, someone, if you're in the, if you can afford in your budget $0 to $50 a finished hour, you're not going to get a lot of auditions. The reason being, it's almost better to do a royalty share because that's a day's work, and you know that's less than $1 an hour for someone, where they get nothing else. That's what they get paid for their work. So that one you can still try if that's in your budget. I just don't know if you'll get any narrators, and it does go up from there. You know, you can. The thing that's actually kind of cool about audiobooks is if you have a narrator that you absolutely love, you can probably hire them. They're going to be more expensive, but if your budget allows it, you're going to get amazing product. You know, you can get the best talent around, you know, to work with you. It is more expensive though. So.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks for explaining that.
Okay. I'm just going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is great.
I'm going like the proverbial train. I hope I'm not. Or there's a fire hose or a train, one or the other. I don't know. So tell me if I'm, you know, if you're going, you're getting overwhelmed.
Oh no, not at all.
Yeah, I think this is great. I have a kind of follow-up question. How do you know, so, I mean, when you're looking and maybe you're going to higher tiers of just payment, but then how do you really know who's going to be a good person to work with?
Okay, that's an excellent question. Anyone on there, they'll have their samples for you to listen to. Even a better option is to go to audible.com. There's no fee to peruse, audible.com. And in the search bar, type their name. And what will pop up is all of their body of work on Audible. And you can listen to their samples. So you can actually see the date when it was released was on there too. So you can see someone who started in 2010, and yeah, maybe they were a little scary back then, but you listen to a sample from last month and you're like, wow, that's exactly. So choose it by their name and by their date, because sometimes, you know, there's a learning curve for narrators, and so you might find that some of their older work, you don't want to listen to their older work because it may not be as good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Did that answer your question? I hope.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You can also look up narrators on Audiophile magazine. They do reviews. They're probably the most well-respected and a print version you can subscribe to. You can also go on their site in the search. You can also search narrators there and look at their reviews. And so that's another good way to look up narrators. Plus, you get to, you're pretty well covered. Like, let's say you hire someone and you liked their sample, and then before the book is even started, they need to send you what they call the first 15 minutes. And it may not be the first 15 minutes. You have a little discretion there. If you have a part in your book that's important to you, like you have a character you want to hear that voiced, then that's probably want them to do their quote-unquote first 15 minutes so that you can listen to it. And at that point, that's really the best and really the only time for you to give input. So at that point, if you're going, oh, this is not anything like I thought it would be, you can ask them, to redo it. Now, this is a little bit tricky because what you're asking them, they may not be able to do, but they might. So you can try that. But, you know, that is the point where you can say, okay, is this going to work out for me and for what I'm envisioning here? So if it doesn't work at that point, you can cancel the contract. After the 15-minute checkoff, if you love it and you say go for it, then you really turn it over to them. So, and at that point, you need to have a little bit of faith in your narrator, because you really can't sit in and listen, or you can't go back and say, well, I think you're reading this part surprisingly fun to listen to. And so even though it's not exactly the same, you'll find that you'll be pleasantly surprised of how much fun it is to listen to that audiobook when it's done.
Wow. That's so cool. So so you're a producer, right?
Yes, in a sense. I narrate and I produce.
Oh.
And so
you know, the 50 to 100 an hour, or whatever the cost is. Does that just go to you as a producer and you kind of split it between your whole team, or how does that work?
Yes, typically what happens is after I finish the audio and it's sent off to my editor and he's making all the corrections, he'll invoice me and I just pay him. And so then what happens is when I'm paid by the author, or technically you are the rights holder, so we call, if it's a producer, then that may not be the author, then we just say, yeah, that's the rights holder, so we'll get paid by the rights holder, and then we'll that covers all of our extra costs. So, and you know, I guess I can do it the other way too. I just usually pay people when they invoice me rather than waiting to be paid.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
So in essence, what's happening is you're paying one lump fee. You don't have to pay anyone else.
Okay.
Though I will say this, there is a way to combine a per finished hour and royalty share. For example, let's say you can't afford the narrator you want, and you really want them to do it. You can say, well, would you accept a hybrid deal? So when I say that, this is not an official ACX or Amazon contract. It is the royalty share contract. But outside of that contract, you're basically going to contract to do a stipend. That's really what it is. So like if you really want that narrator to do it and you're willing to say pay for some of the production costs, then that can work really well too. And that is an option that more and more people are using, because that can work, you know, that can work well for all parties involved. So the production, you know, for me, my production can be covered, and I'm still maybe not getting paid, but I believe in your work and I see the track record, and I know that in the 7-year contract I can recoup the expenses and hopefully make some money to pay my bills. So I guess in the long and short of it is. So I hope, did I explain that well enough? Was that understandable?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Looks like someone else has a question, so I'll be quiet now. In the chat, it looks like.
Yeah, do you see, Nancy, there's a question in the chat of what are your pet peeves when working with authors?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll tell you some things. Pet peeves. I don't know that I have pet peeves necessarily, but I do have some things that are really, really helpful. For example, if you can provide for me a character breakdown, that's amazing, because that gives me a little more look into who you see as that person. So their age, their background, if they have an accent, where they're from, anything that's going to help me get some insight into who you're looking for. And you can even use known people, like a Hollywood person, a politician, or some sort of guru, someone that is very well known. You can say, hey, I want this person to have this sort of feel to them. It's going to sound a little different for sure, but you should have that's really helpful in kind of seeing character, and hopefully I love my authors. I will say I feel so grateful. I've had it's just so much fun to collaborate on these things. So I think something that I haven't experienced but would be hard is someone who asks you to change things that you really can't change. The process, or they want to hear every chapter before the finished product. For me, that's not even really possible the way I work, because I have to turn everything over to my editor. So I can't really, be going back and forth. So it's really helpful for me if I can just give the final product and it's listened to all at once. I did have one situation that was really tricky, and that was this person wanted to direct me through every chapter, and it's a really good friend of mine, and I got one chapter really good, I think probably, but all the others, she was not really happy with it, and she wanted me to change so much of it. I knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't meet the expectation she had for that book. So we basically dissolved the contract, and I said, to read your own book, because she knew exactly how she wanted. She's having a hard time meeting her own expectations too, but sometimes that's the way to go. So can I go off on that for a second? Another little tangent. I want to tell you about a coach for writers. He's not a writing coach. He's an audiobook narration coach, and he works with authors. His name is Sean Pratt. I'm trying to think what his website is. I think it's SeanPrattPresents.com. And he's actually my personal coach. I'm a huge advocate of always having coaches. It's just really important to have, someone who's, especially in my industry, who gives you feedback and who's helping you get in the right direction. And, it's just really important. And he also coaches authors who want to read their own work. And I have huge respect for him. You can even contact him at seanpratt@comcast.net. He's pretty easy to find if you even Google him. But if that's something that, like for my friend, I think she would really benefit from having someone who knows the audiobook industry, he's a coach to begin with for regular narrators, but he's also really good at helping you figure out how you can be your own narrator. So just putting a plug in there for him.
Very cool. Interesting.
Did I answer the question? Sorry.
I think so. We have another one for you. Okay. So this one, what if you would like to narrate your own audiobook? Let's say it's nonfiction and you have some theater experience. How would you go about doing that?
Okay, well, I'll go into that a little more. So I love the idea of hiring a coach to help you, to give you feedback, because I'll tell you the one thing about, especially nonfiction, that's different than reading the book is not only do you have to give information, which is basically the main purpose of a book, and a nonfiction book, or to share information, share experiences, to educate. You throw into that with the audiobook, it's got to be entertaining or people won't listen. So there are some techniques that you can do. If you want to narrate your own nonfiction audiobook, and you have a theater background, like you said, that's really good. Theater actors definitely, because you are an actor when you're a narrator, and you are performing in a sense. So if you have that background, that is immensely helpful. And it is sometimes difficult to take it into that space where you're narrating. You can also, if you want to do your own, I can recommend some really excellent resources for you. I don't know where everyone's living. Of course, I know the people who are close to me. There's many people who will help you do your own book, who can record it for you. Kenny Hodges. You know what, you guys, this is what you need to do. You need to send me a note, like on Facebook, and I can send you all this stuff. because I'm just thinking of these now. There's huge studios in Salt Lake, and they do audiobooks as well. So you can actually rent a space. That's going to cost a little more. You can also create your space, and people get very creative with their spaces. So some people actually use, if you have a walk-in closet with lots of clothing, that's not a bad place to record. It's kind of tight, maybe not so comfortable, but if you get the right equipment and software and a good microphone, then that might work really well for you. So there are just a lot of resources now where you can do all this from a computer, a laptop computer, or any computer that you have. You can get the tools to do it at home.
What would you say? So I do have a nonfiction book that came out a couple months ago, and I don't know that I really would want to narrate it myself, but just kind of the cost required, either renting in the space or getting the equipment and doing it at my own place. What kind of expense do you think that is? Just, the cost of that compared to the cost for just having you or somebody else narrate it, who's the pro?
Well, that's a really good question, because are you going to be doing more? Because if you're buying equipment, that is an investment. For example, you can use free software on the internet to do a book. It's not quite as nice as getting a nice package that you can download, and it has some bells and whistles that I use all the time because I do narration all the time. But you can get a lot of things, like you could check on a local classified, see if I've seen good microphones on classified ads. I think probably the biggest expense would be a microphone, and that would run anywhere from $150 up, and they get really expensive. We're talking thousands of dollars. But you can find a decent mic for $150. And then you can use Audacity, which is free. I've known people who use GarageBand. Again, that's if you're going to do one book. If you're going to do more, you probably want to invest more in the setup. And the other thing is room treatment. I kind of would jokingly refer to your closet, but room treatment is really important when you're doing an audiobook, or you get artifacts and things that are very difficult to listen to. Sometimes you'll get an echo, you'll get reverberation off walls, or you might get you'll get exterior noises coming in, and that's really no longer acceptable. Some of the older stuff, if you listen to it, is not that great quality, but anymore publishers and they are looking for better quality. So I don't know, if you're just going to do one book, it might be cheaper to hire a narrator, honestly, and it depends on how long it is too. So
okay, thanks. I was kind of wondering if it would just be better off to have somebody else do it.
Yeah. Well, and it depends too. Like, if there are any fictional things or things in there, like, are you a good storyteller? You know, if you're a good storyteller, the quality of your voice is not nearly as important as if you are a good storyteller. Because is your voice interesting? It doesn't have to be a beautiful voice or a, you know, something when you hear it, you go, oh, that's a beautiful voice. There are some really quirky narrators out there, and they're very individual, but they can tell a really good story. So that's another thing you want to be able to do. Oh, what is her name? Al Fox Caraway. She reads her own books, and she does a great job. She does a really good job. She's super high energy. And you need to bring that energy into the booth if you're going to do your own, because you'll put people to sleep if you don't.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I could see
Well,
that.
one thing Sherry Dew's Worth the Wrestle, and she narrated her own audiobook. And I really like that because she's talking about her experiences, and hearing her personally doing the voice, it just made it feel really intimate. So I think sometimes it is great when it is nonfiction to have the author do it, because then it's like you're talking with them face to face rather than just reading a book where you're more removed from the author.
That's excellent point. Absolutely. In fact, I rarely do nonfiction of that sort. And especially people who are in a position where they've done a lot of speaking, they can do very well. So, and like I said, I mean, if you can bring that energy, if you can put yourself in this space, that's really what it takes. If you're uncomfortable, it'll come through. If you can just be relaxed and be yourself which can be awkward when you're sitting in a tight space, it's just different. You're just in a different place than when you're, normally. But if you can get into that space where you are comfortable, that really does, you can probably do. So, and you're right, to hear something in the voice of the author in that case. I totally agree with you.
Okay,
I know I've enjoyed a lot of those nonfiction ones that are narrated by the author, because it's, I don't know, I feel like I get to know them a little better when it's in their own voice. Makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a couple just sort of like businessy questions, I guess. Sorry to derail a little bit.
Not at all.
So I'm wondering about like distribution. So it sounds like you, when you do it through ACX, that you can sell your audiobook on Amazon and Audible. But like, how do you get audiobooks into libraries and like bookstores or other online sellers, I guess?
Okay. Let me address the libraries first of all.
Okay.
That I know that publishers go to specific library conventions to get their books into libraries. You can also check with your local library and just take it to them personally. That's something that you could donate a copy to your local library. But getting it to many libraries is a little trickier. One publisher I work with, part of his job is just going to conventions to get his books into libraries. It's like, the Book Expo America, where they have all the publishers there. They have those things like for the librarians, and you can actually, I think my knowledge on that is rather limited. I mean, that's pretty much all I know. But I don't think I think you can totally take your work into local libraries and just donate them to the library. The other thing too is I love Spoken Realms if you want distribution outside of Audible and Amazon. Spoken Realms, I've worked with them for a number of years. Not only, they give you a little better return on the royalty through Audible, because they do work with Audible, and you get a little higher royalty back when there's a sale, but you can do a contract with them that they call extended distribution. And I have one author that wanted to have her work on the Deseret bookshelf, and she wanted physical CDs made that could be purchased. And so we use Spoken Realms to do that. And I think they're a better option if you want to be outside of the Audible / Amazon, distribution model. You can sell it to anyone else. You can have it, to any other platform out there that can distribute your work. So there are the two different kinds of contracts typically. But I will say this: if you choose the extended distribution, or with ACX they call that non-exclusive distribution, your royalty percentage goes down. And for each of those, it is a little different. I'm not sure exactly how much of a percent it goes down, but that's why I like to use Spoken Realms. You still get a better financially. You get more bang for your buck if you want to go non-exclusive or extended. I use both those terms because you'll see both of them in the contracts. So
did you say that Audible and ACX, can you choose whether it's a non-exclusive contract, or do they just do? Oh, okay.
Yes, on the outset, when you're filling out all of your information for them, you'll have that option to choose. I would say almost everyone I've worked with in the last 4 years just does regular standard distribution, because I think for a lot of them, they are prolific writers and they're writing all the time, and that's they only put their books, say, on Amazon. They're not selling physical copies. They're just doing ebooks or Kindle books, and they do a lot of them, and so they choose that option. This one particular author I told you about has been an author. I hesitate to say her name, but you'd probably recognize her name and know who she is, and she's done some really wonderful titles, and she's been around for a while, and her books have been around for a while. So she was this was not new for her. This wasn't a new release or something that was coming up. She was going backward. She was doing audio after the fact, and so she wanted to have as many options open so that she could promote her books as possible. So does that make sense?
Yeah. So if you do that through ACX and you do non-exclusive, then you can go to Spoken Realms to do also CDs and Deseret Bookshelf and things like that.
Yes, you can they also work with Audible, so it will automatically go to Audible also. So this author I was just telling you about, her content is on Audible, and it's available through Amazon as well. But she also does use Deseret Bookshelf. She uses, she has her physical CDs. She can use them. She can distribute that however she chooses, because she's not locked into just the Audible standard contract.
So do people ever go straight to Spoken Realms? And if they do, since they do have that link to Audible, okay. So
yes,
they don't even have to.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, that's fine. That's okay.
For her project, we only used Spoken Realms.
Oh, okay.
It's wonderful because they contract with Blackstone Audio, and Blackstone makes the physical CDs. It's all in place, so she didn't have to do anything. So she just basically, I took it, we contracted, she signed it, we turned it over to Spoken Realms. I worked with Spoken Realms as part of our production team. They had the physical CDs created, so if she wants physical CDs to take to an event, she can just order them, or she can get those in a retail outlet, or take them to her local library and donate some there.
Okay. Cool. That was very informative. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Do we have any other questions? Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Just we have a couple minutes left, so if anybody has any other questions you want to ask Nancy, either feel free to speak out or put in the chat, and I will ask those questions for you.
I have one more that I think you sort of touched on, but so you said that this one client is doing her audiobooks kind of after the fact. Do you find in your experience that nowadays it's more common for authors to release their, the text book at the same time as audio, or is it usually staggered?
It's usually at the same time or very close.
Oh, okay.
And the reason for that is the audio market is growing in ways that I know I have been surprised. For 2 years, I've gone to the Audio Producers Association convention in New York. Last year, they told us that the audio patronage, or I don't know, usage or whatever, new listeners jumped by 30%. When I went this year, it jumped another 30%. So it's huge. People are asking for it. And let me tell you, for me, I know why. I love audio. I've always loved audio. It's something that, if I'm driving in the car, it keeps me awake. And I've listened to audiobooks for years. So for me, I've always been a huge fan of audio. But I'm thinking more and more, they're realizing that even for children learning to read, the audio and the book in front of them is really helpful. And it helps children who have difficulty reading to have that audio too. So there's some good that it's doing along with just for entertainment. So I would say that is true. I do want to say this though. Most people want to think that, well, if I get an audiobook, it's going to boost my sales. But you need to understand at least now in this point in time, it's not working that way quite yet. Most of the time, the book sales are driving the audio sales. So if you get an ad in BookBub, if you're familiar with BookBub, it's an advertising thing that you can sometimes get into. So it's marketing. If you get a BookBub ad, then typically the sales for other audiobooks goes through the roof at the same time. It's more common for fans to follow an author than to follow a narrator. In some genres, that's changing. We are seeing, some people following narrators, but if you look at, the thousands of, readers of Michael Crichton's book, you're going to have 1/10 of those people following his narrator, whose name is Scott Brick. And, do people know his name as well? Not really. They like to listen to his books. But so just keep in mind that if your books are doing well, it's likely your audiobooks will do well too. If your books are not doing well, your audio probably will not do well. So that's just kind of a rule of thumb right now at this point in time.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, I think we will wrap up. I just want to say thank you so much, Nancy. This was fabulous information. Like I was saying at the beginning, I really didn't know anything about the audiobooks, and you have just provided so much great information for all of us to kind of have a better understanding of what is involved and how to go about it. So thank you very much again for everything you've shared.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Happy to join you today.
Yeah. And thank you everybody who joined on. And just a reminder, we will have the recording up on our website so you can listen to it again. And I know that I'm going to be listening to it again. And if you have any ideas, topics that you want us to address in upcoming roundtables, please just email us at info.ldspma@gmail.com. And we would be happy to get those topics talked about in our upcoming roundtables. So again, thank you, Nancy, and thank you everybody who joined on, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all. It was
Thank
a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.